Welcome to part two of today's episode. We continue the conversation with Dr. Matthew Salter, looking at how we can move towards better practices in research. I can see the need to embrace technology and use that to support responsible research practices. The angle in regards to image manipulation, why is this an issue and how can technology support researchers in detecting a misuse of image here and there?
I think you put your finger on a really important point again, Chubbs, because image manipulation is really, has been a serious problem. And images, along with text, are part of the paper. They convey information as well. And so the possibility of plagiarism and the possibility of problems arising from image manipulation are similar to those problems arising from misuse of text. And in the past, there have been cases where people have deliberately tried to fake images. They typically are exposed and that becomes quite a big story. I think those cases are fairly few and far between, which is good. I think the majority of researchers are not engaged in that. But there's always the time when you may be trying to explain or convey as clearly as possible what an image conveys in terms of information. And while you're doing that, it's easy to kind of stray into a gray area where you may be doing something which is close to kind of unethical image manipulation. I'll give you an example. For example, I've seen cases where um, people have, for example, had uh, electron micrographs or photographs of cells which have been stained, and they've been trying to show that there's the population of this cell and compare them in the image. And to do so, they've actually had, for example, it helps if they adjust the contrast. And there are times when you can adjust the contrast to an acceptable level just so the image is clear. But if you go too far, you actually start to sort of white out parts of the image and it becomes misleading. And it's very easy to do that, not knowing where exactly the line is. And, it's not something you're deliberately trying to do, but you can accidentally cross a line. I've seen other cases, for example, where people have put, gel electrophoresis traces together and they've put data lines, which when they did the experiment in a gel electrophoresis, these lines were not quite next to each other. If you put them next to each other, you can see the difference very clearly. And people have presented that image as if it was the original image they had. What they've actually done is cut this and this part out together and put them together and left the rest of the image out. And that's not really acceptable. Um, if you are actually seeking to show clearly that, compared to a piece of data, first of all, you need to make it very clear that that's what you're doing. And so this is the purposes of showing things clearly. And when, you submit that to a journal, you need to be very honest about what you've done. So I think the majority of people are not trying to manipulate images deliberately to fake things. It's in the process of trying to make your images look as beautiful as possible, and as clear as possible. You accidentally stray over the line. And I think it's a really important area. And journals spend a lot of time checking images to make sure that there isn't something untoward about images. And so it's an area that journals spend a lot of time and staff time looking at.
Would technology be able to support detecting it? Let's say before you submit it, I'm going to use the word accidentally would have manipulated an image. Is there a way technology can support, or is there technology out there that's supporting the detection of that?
So there was software that journals use to look at and compare various things. Those are available as well for people to check. I think the best thing to do in these cases is when you submit to a journal, is to first of all really keep all of your original data. So all of the images these days are all the computer files. So it's easy to store those electronically. Always keep, and this goes for all of your research, you need to curate all of your data well. I mean, that's part of being a scientist, but certainly with images, make sure you have the original images, make sure you know where they are, make sure that they are appropriately labeled so that you can, if asked, supply those images to the journal at later on, or even at the time of submission, submit the original images and
Mhm.
say, this is what, I had, and this is what I'm actually putting in the paper. And I know that most journals will be happy to have an inquiry, and your kind of upfront honesty about that process. So if you're supplying those or certainly keeping hold of them, and in a place where they're well curated, that is a very important step to take. There's nothing that's worse if a journal asks for those original images and you can't find them. That's a really as a scientist, that's not a very professional way to carry on, and also raises concerns amongst the
Yeah, a lot of
publishers.
red
Yeah,
flags there.
it's not great.
Yeah. We're just gonna shift the conversation a little bit, just so we can address from your experience as a consultant, how technology can inform institutional strategy and frameworks for research integrity. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's again a really super important question, and I think that they go hand in hand with policy. I don't think technology as by itself is enough. It's really important. It's a big can really help, but it helps best when it supports a clear institutional commitment and culture of research integrity. Many organizations now, many institutions, most institutions take research integrity, academic integrity very seriously. Many have research integrity officers who are people you could ask about the kind of questions we've been talking about. I should have mentioned that earlier, really. If your institution has a research integrity officer and you're concerned about anything, go there. Don't, they're not going to think that you're trying to, that you're somehow doing something which is untoward. They'll actually be glad to help you navigate and answer your questions in a more full way that we can in this segment that we're doing today. So many organizations now have research integrity programs. They have research integrity officers. I would say to PIs, I would say to research students, I would say to someone, anyone joining a new institution, the most important thing to do in your lab, whether you run a lab yourself, or whether you're, a student in a lab, is to take research integrity seriously. It's part of your responsibility as a scientist, part of your professional life as a scientist. And therefore, if your institute has a research integrity program or training, always take that. I think it's a fantastic resource. Even
Mm.
if you're quite experienced, you go to a new institution, it's always worth having a refresher and always worth keeping your skills up to date. I think where institutions can improve the impact of their research integrity training is to make available the kind of tools we're talking about around plagiarism detection and encouraging their responsible use, and also around potential image manipulation detection, and encourage and destigmatize the use of those, and really promote those as a positive step towards making to bolstering your credentials as a responsible scientist. So I think that in isolation, technology can bring us some way. I think it's really works well when an institution like it's promoted and integrated into an overall culture and program of training in research integrity.
So, what about technology informing improvements in frameworks, or even how we do research integrity in institutions? How might this happen across institutions?
That's a really good question, and it really follows on from the previous one. We've already talked a bit about plagiarism detection software, image manipulation software. I think there are a whole range of other things that can happen at all stages in lives of researchers. There are also things which are close to plagiarism detection software. There are tools that allow you to assess the originality of something you've written. There are tools which will allow you to work to improve your written, the way you present things in the written document. I think those technologies are important. I think also technologies that allow you to or help you to curate information are really important too, because as we've discussed, when I was doing my PhD, which is a few years ago, we didn't have the opportunity to have a centralized kind of database of curated information and the shareability of electronic information we have now. There are a number of systems out there that allow that and allow you to, very neatly curate not just your written work, but also your data. Data is a super important thing, which is, a big part of open science, and making sure that you have the right policies and the right tools to allow researchers to curate and properly manage their data is a very important thing. So I think there's a combination. It can start right at undergraduate level. I mean, really, it can start at high school level to get people used to it before they go into higher education, and certainly through people's research career, as many or places are have mandatory training courses again in research integrity, but also in using those tools and providing a system and assistance on how to use them. So I think learning what those tools can do for us and incorporating that as an overall part, not an added extra, but a key and integral part of research management is a really important thing.
We're seeing in the media that some institutions are beginning to embrace the idea behind research commercialization. And I've been reading about universities in Australia, working with universities in the United States, trying to look at projects that would lead towards research commercialization. I know it's only just beginning to start, but from your experience, what are some strategies that can help institutions looking to tap into commercialization as an approach?
Yes, you're right. It's a really growing area, and particularly you mentioned Australia. I'm over here in the United States. It happens UK, my home country as well, and around the world. Um, and there are, not just coming from universities. Many universities now have kind of a commercialization unit or a business development unit that allow people or provide sometimes incubator space for companies, nascent companies, and advice on how to move forward with the development and commercialization. Um, I worked in the lab the last time when used to work in the University of Tokyo. Part of that laboratory was part funded by a pharmaceutical company, and they worked with that research group to try to develop technologies and treatments. Working right on the front lines with academics. That's been going on certainly in pharmaceuticals for quite a while, and also my previous role in the American Physical Society. Many industrial physicists, start projects at institutions. I think the important thing is for people who are wanting to bring an invention, whatever it might be, to try and develop it to a commercial product, is to tap into any of the resources that your institution might have, um, and then go out and look for other places that might be able to help. I think the key thing is there's the so-called bench to market, the kind of valley of death, which is comes between the two, where you may have a really promising and interesting result in the lab, but getting from there to a viable product or treatment is we sometimes underestimate how difficult that is, and many promising ideas don't make it across that bridge. There are many journals actually now that are trying to bridge that gap and publish research in the area that focuses on actually transforming some benchtop research into commercialized research. Certainly, for example, in material science, there are a number of journals that do it. So that's an area where people could publish and read about that kind of experience. And from my experience in looking at publishing and talking to many people in this area, I think the key thing that researchers need to realize is that you can be an excellent researcher, but that doesn't necessarily equate with being someone who has those skills to start that business. And many researchers feel that, they know the research best, and they're frustrated about how difficult it is to move into commercialization. And they beat themselves up about not being able to do that. And the point is, those are two different skill sets, and not everybody has those. Very few people have those two skill sets. So I think finding a way to partner with somebody who knows how to raise capital, for example, to develop, who knows about all the different stages that a commercialization process has to go through to get it to market, is experience in those areas. I think being aware that those resources exist, and being open enough to embrace those opportunities. Some of them maybe your research office at the university may be able to introduce you to. I mean, it's in no way a sign of lack of ability on your part if you need to rely on those resources, because what you bring to the table is the scientific knowledge, the know-how, and the understanding of that science and technology. But that's not enough just to get you to market. There are other things which other specialists can help you with. So I think being open to that is really important.
Yeah, I think one of the things we're hearing is the need to add a level of entrepreneurship as part of the research study focus, and I'm actually keen to see how people begin to embrace this and move towards commercialization. For us to wrap up today, I'd like to hear if you have any other suggestions or anything you'd like to share with the educational community who's listening with regards to how we achieve or move towards better practices in research.
Yeah, I think there are so many of ways that we can do that. I think the first thing, the most important thing is with improving practice towards being a better researcher is to start early. I have to say, when I did my undergraduate training and postgraduate training, I was very fortunate to have an excellent advisor who always set the highest standards for us and always, made sure that we performed our research in a way which had the utmost respect for accuracy and honesty, and clarity and integrity. And in my research afterwards, and sometimes even in my career now, when I'm facing a question, I sometimes ask myself what my supervisor would have done and how she would have directed me. And that's been really useful. So I think having a great mentor at the beginning of your career is so important, in a number of ways, because it's almost being like a parent. It's about teaching you, how to function well in society, and how to behave well as a researcher. So I think having a great mentor is really important. I think those mentors can be supported by institutional training around the best way to manage data, what kind of standards you need around writing research articles, about storing and sharing your data, about issues, and having a forum to discuss the kind of issues we've been discussing today and give guidance, and keep that going throughout people's careers so that they can, keep their skills honed throughout their career, and really um, develop the mindset when they realize that, they are as being a researcher is as much a profession as anything else. And whereas, you know, um, a chef who is proud of what they do, keeps a clean kitchen, and uses fresh ingredients, and keeps the knife sharpened, and pays real attention to every step of what they prepare. You would, as a researcher, want to make sure that you have your data is well curated, that your research is methodically planned, that your data is well curated. You wouldn't eat in a restaurant where the kitchen was dirty, or you would knowingly do so anyway. And so, as a researcher, you want to take pride in having that level of professional feeling about your work. And there's a huge role for you to encourage your colleagues, for your mentors to guide you, for your research institutions to guide you. But ultimately, it's your responsibility as a researcher, and taking pride in that as part of your professional development, I think, is very.
Thank you so much, Dr. Matthew. I would like to say a big thank you to Dr. Matthew Salter, CEO and founder of Akabana Consulting, for sharing his insights on how we can move towards better practices in research. Thank you again, Matthew.
Thank you.